What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the second installment to What If Deku Had Assault Mode, aka what if he was Meliodas, right? The first part seemed like you guys enjoyed it, so I'm back to bring you guys another part. Not only that, but if you guys can do me a quick favor right now, check if you are subscribed, because if you aren't, please do your boy a favor. Your boy is so close to 100K, and I can't wait to get that plaque and just shove it in people's faces and be like, yeah, you know what? I got a YouTube plaque. Do you got a YouTube plaque? They're gonna be like, no, and I'll be like, exactly. But all jokes aside though, if you guys aren't subbed yet, it would do your boy a favor. Also, consider leaving a like on these videos, seeing as it helps a ton with the algorithm, and in these current times, I really need it. Like, your boy is struggling, but it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you do, you just leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought. Anyways, let's get into it.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Aizawa looks to Izuku as he then says, good. Then, for the next month, I'm going to need to monitor your behavior as well as get you into a training on your Quirk regimen. That way you can finally control your powers. Because from what I was shown in that little skirmish we had with All Might and myself, you need to control your Quirk if you're going to be allowed into the public. Izuku looks to the direction of Aizawa and asks him what that's going to do for him, as Aizawa would turn to him and tell him that he'll give him a second chance. Izuku, after hearing these words come from the mouth of Aizawa, would immediately have his resolve just engulfed with flames. He finally has a goal to aspire. He finally has something that he wants to do, and he now knows that he's going to be having to put in hours of work to control his Quirk. Not only that, but he's going to just have to put work in general, because he wants to show Aizawa that he's not wasting his time on a nobody. Deku has been waiting on an opportunity his entire life, and he's not going to be wasting it. Not again. So Izuku would decide that basically he's going to be training for the next month under supervision, of course, and would begin to get his things together, mastering his Quirk a little bit more day by day and learning more and more abilities as time goes on. Izuku never really thought too much about his Quirk, and eventually one day he was given a sword. When he was given this small blade thing, Izuku had an attack come at him, and when Izuku swung the sword into the air to try to essentially hit it back, it was almost as if that strange flame that was shooting at him, let's just say that a flame Quirk person shot flames at him, and Izuku, he grabbed the sword and he swung it into the air subconsciously. It was just something that was engraved in his memory. Izuku simply let out the words full counter, as the flames immediately ricocheted off of his blade in the air literally and just went straight back to the attacker, which essentially ended up pretty much kind of burning him a little bit, which Izuku rushed over and asked if he was okay. The guy immediately got up and began to pretty much tell Izuku not to worry about it, that he's fine, really. Thanks, I'm gonna go now. I need to switch my hero suit. And Izuku would pat the back of his head as he, just begins laughing. Suddenly, Izuku realizes that he's finally enjoying using his Quirk and having fun for the first time in forever. Cue time skip. Now we suddenly find ourselves about, let's say he was 7 years old, so now I'm gonna be saying it's been about 6 years. He's gonna be like, okay, so 7, let's say it's 8 years, all right? He's gonna be 14, and currently he's inside of the house of Aizawa. It's not an extravagant place, it's actually a small apartment, a condo. Izuku has a room, Aizawa has a room, and Izuku's usually alone by himself during the nighttime, towards midday times of the day. So that's when Izuku's able to pretty much relax, watch TV, eat snacks, and also during the day is the time that he gets trained, while Aizawa simply just sleeps all day. So pretty much Izuku is alone most of the time, but he now knows that he has a goal, and that goal is to essentially make it to UA and make Aizawa proud, show him that the training, that the trust that he put into him was well worth it, because Izuku is on his hero's journey and he's on a mission to become the greatest hero of all time. Of course, at this current moment, since Izuku was adopted by Aizawa, it did go out to the media, and many people are already aware of said fact that Izuku is with Aizawa, you know what I mean? Everybody's kind of okay, so he's little Mr. Big Shot. He's been trained by a pro hero all his life. He's probably going to be cocky, super powerful, and that's just the image that everybody's getting from him. But Izuku's actually really laid back, chill, and a bit perverted, just because of the fact that he's the reincarnation of Meliodas. If I don't give that to him, I feel like I'm doing Meli a disjustice. Like I'm not doing him justice, you know what I mean? So that all out of the way, Izuku's pretty much training every single day and pretty much got to the point in which Meliodas is at by season 1 of the 7 deadly sins. You know, obviously he has pretty great swordsman skills. He also is able to use full counter. He has a couple of things. He doesn't have the sword Lost Bane, so unfortunately he's unable to multiply for now, but he did put in a recommendation to the UA to give him a nice little costume reminiscent of the outfit that Meliodas has, but he just kind of looks taller than him, but it's still the same outfit. Not the bartender one, but more or less the one with the white shirt, you know, the green undershirt and stuff like that is the outfit that Izuku's going to be rocking, and he's also going to be given the sword that Meliodas has in the original 7 deadly sins, Lost Vein. So be hyped for that. But as of now, he's currently just waiting for the recommendation exam to finally commence, and the day would eventually arrive, seeing as Izuku just counting down the days till eventually he gets to do that. He would go in and he would pretty much just destroy all of the markings that Aizawa had for him. I mean, at this point, everybody really knows that's in the hero community that Izuku is a lot stronger than All Might at this point. I mean, when it comes to like attacks that range from like quirked attacks, he's able to use a repel like attack on those, but when it comes to physical ones, he has a bit of a harder time. But due to the fact that he has increased strength and he also is very, very skilled in combat, it's almost as if Izuku is able to, you know, kind of just like parry it off, just like let it go by him, not really care about it. Not only that, but when it comes to his demon form, he still has trouble controlling it, but he's able to snap back into it eventually, right? He's had a bit more luck when it comes to controlling his demon form, right? But all that aside, we basically jump into a moment of time where Izuku pretty much gets his acceptance letter, and Aizawa just looks towards Izuku, telling him that at school he's not going to be treated like a son or even like he knows him. He's going to be treated just like all of the rest of his students. Izuku looks to Aizawa and says that he wouldn't have it any other way, as he then looks at him and says, "Pops," and Aizawa looks back at him and he's like, "I told you to stop calling me that." Deku just says that, you know, that's what he looks at him as, you know, one of his father figures. And Aizawa just scoffs as he then says, "Fine, just wake me up in the morning." Suddenly the next day comes by and Izuku just sees Aizawa passed out. He then shakes him and Aizawa gets up as his eyes go red and he's like, "Why'd you wake me?" And Izuku's like, "Bro, you told me to wake you up, chill." And Aizawa's like, "Oh, right, I did." As suddenly Izuku then goes on to pretty much get his outfit together and meet Aizawa at school the very first day. He's there about 1 hour ahead of schedule. He's just having a little conversation with Nezu. Nezu's sitting there on the chair like, "Izuku, how are you today, young man?" Izuku walks into the office and he's like, "Oh yeah, Nezu, I'm doing great." And Nezu says, Great. Would you like some tea?" Izuku's like, "Sure, I'll take some tea." And Nezu's like, "Oh yeah, fine, here's the finest tea." You know, we begin drinking and Nezu's like, "You know, I actually drink this tea to make my fur quite soft. It's impeccable." He's like, you should have a touch." And Izuku just awkwardly rushes over. He's like, "You know what, you actually are pretty soft." Suddenly Nezu's like, "Yeah." And then Aizawa opens the door just to see Izuku petting Nezu on the head. And Aizawa's just like, "Is this a good time?" Izuku looks to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, it's pest time. It's there could not be a better time." Suddenly Aizawa tells Izuku that he just has to have one last minute chat with Nezu alone, and Izuku understands that going to the classroom, just putting his head down and passing out. Eventually all of the students end up walking into the classroom, and Aizawa picked up the sleeping habit from Izuku picked up the sleeping habit from Aizawa just because of the little fact that, I mean, Aizawa's always sleeping, right? So something from Aizawa had to have rubbed off on Deku. So let's just say that he's in the back of the classroom. He's passed out, his head's on the desk. Nobody could really recognize who he is except for Todoroki and Momo, who were both part of the recommendation exam. Todoroki's staring daggers at Deku like, I'll get him. Like, you know, like just thinking to himself that, you know, Deku's nobody, you know, he's better than him, yada, yada, yada. But that's pretty much just the flow of thinking that Todoroki has at this current moment. But Izuku could care less. class. Izuku's passed out, and suddenly Aizawa would stand up as, he begins unzipping his sleeping bag, and the students all immediately look up wondering, who's that? But Izuku's wide awake, and the second that Aizawa tells him what to do, Izuku doesn't question. He just walks out, and Aizawa looks to the rest of the students before saying, you should all follow his lead. Do exactly what he does. You won't regret it. Deku from here goes to the changing room. He begins just getting dressed. He shows off the abs, the chiseled chest, and Izuku just looking like an absolute beast. He basically has a Bakugo type body frame with a little bit more muscle, just a tad bit more, and it's a little bit more condensed, so he's actually a lot stronger than he looks. And Deku, Deku's just doing his thing, right? Eventually, they all make it outside, and Aizawa tosses the ball to Bakugo, who, of course, would win the practical exam and stuff like that. So he's gonna be the one who throws the ball. But we all know who the real winner would be if Izuku was to take that practical exam. If Izuku was there, all I'm gonna say is he would have literally gone through that and destroyed robots as if, just like the scene when he ended up destroying the castle with Bond. He was just arm wrestling. He literally would have just gone in and begin to essentially go berserk on all those robots. It wouldn't have even been a challenge. But Izuku was doing his absolute best during these little Quirk apprehension tests that they had, so Izuku was not holding back. That's one thing that Aizawa has engraved in his head. Hold back when you have to, don't hold back when you don't have to. And this is one of those moments where Izuku just doesn't have to hold back. So with the grip string test machine, he just shatters it. With the 50-meter dash, he clears it in record time. When it comes to the long jump, Izuku just lunged all the way to the sky and landed down way further than he was supposed to. When it comes to the ball throw, Izuku tapped into his demonic form for a brief instant just to throw the ball as hard as he physically could, snapped back into reality, and then looked at his peers with a little bit of a devilish aura, but it calmed down almost immediately, and his peers were like, what was that? But Izuku just smiles and walks to the back of the class. Bakugo's just over there gritting his teeth like, no way, someone's better than me, right? He's salty because he's thinking that somebody's gonna threaten his masculinity, you know what I'm saying? And so, he just feels insecure at this moment because he knows that Izuku is just a tank. And if you guys are wondering what Izuku does actually look like, I'm pretty sure I put up a picture of Izuku for the intro. If not, you guys could check my community tab. There's a commissioned Deku artwork that I had actually paid for, which was for the thumbnail, but it just didn't fit as well as the image that I ended up using did. So yeah, it's probably going to be in the movie version of this when I do end up making that, because I probably will, but that's besides the point. Anyways though, what ends up happening following this situation is essentially Izuku is pretty much the one who gets first place. Now obviously we know that in the original Momo gets first place, so she still does get second, but the reason that Deku gets first is just because he shatters every score for everything. Momo did great in everything because of her versatile quirk, but Izuku's quirk is just made for crushing dreams and just destroying people. He's a demon, for crying out loud. So Izuku was definitely able to do his absolute best and just absolutely blow the competition out of the water with his powers, his aura, his presence, honestly, was enough to actually elevate others to do better. Izuku casually walks up to Uraraka and he's like, hey, how you doing? Uraraka's like, oh, wow, you're talking to me? Izuku's just like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't I be? And Uraraka's just all like, oh, well, you know, she just starts talking and stuff. And Izuku's like, great. He then goes on to pretty much squeeze, you know what I'm talking about, right? He starts squeezing it, and Uraraka's like, what? She jumps up into the air, she blushes heavily, and Izuku looks at her and says, yep, you're pretty healthy. Aizawa immediately grabs him with his scarf and shoves him in, and he looks at him with those eyes, and Izuku's like, it won't happen again. Well, I swear to God, it won't happen again. And Aizawa just looks at Deku and just straight bang, right in the face, just hits Deku straight in the jaw, and sends him flying to the ground. He's like, I deserve that. Suddenly Aizawa looks to him and tells him that he agreed he wouldn't do that. Izuku says he couldn't hold back. I mean, look at her, look at how she looks. And Uraraka just starts blushing even harder. She's like, what? You know what I mean? And then Izuku's like, I'll leave her alone, I promise. Uraraka after this just walks home like in a little bit of embarrassment. She starts speed walking. She sees Izuku from the corner of her eye and she begins, walking as fast as she can. Izuku looks at her and, he begins catching up, trying to apologize. But Uraraka just out of nowhere gets this anime girl super speed and just runs away. So Izuku didn't even get the chance to apologize for what he did, but he goes home and on his way there, Mineta's following him slowly. And he's like, how dare you? Deku sees Mineta in the corner of an alleyway and Mineta's like, how dare you touch Uraraka? That was for me. You know what I mean? And Deku just looks back at him and he's like, oh, well, do you want me to describe what it was? And Mineta goes, yeah. Suddenly Izuku begins to talk to him and they both begin to just perv out in that alleyway. You know what I mean? They start sharing contacts and Mineta and Deku just start texting. And, he starts telling him about her. Mineta's all like, I'm going to do it too, but to Momo. And Deku's like, I don't recommend it. The only reason that Aizawa let it slide for me was because, I'm kind of his adopted son. And Mineta's like, wait, you're that kid? And Deku's like, yep. The one and only. Suddenly Mineta understands everything. The picture is perfectly clear now. And he's like, all right, well, now I know not to mess with him. And, he kind of understands that he won't even get to do that thing to Momo. But Deku says that he'll, see what he can do. That he'll try to get the attention of that Momo Yaoyorozu girl, saying he also noticed her as well. Izuku says that he's not going to be restrained to one woman. And so, the very next day rolls around and suddenly they're in the classroom when All Might bursts in through the door and he's like, I am here walking into the door like a normal person, right? He walks in, he begins doing his monologuing and suddenly he reveals a button or a little remote on the back of his costume. He clicks it, he waits, he shoots, he misses. Psych. No, I'm just kidding. But he does open the wall. He reveals that there's a bunch of costumes and the class is just like, what? You know what I mean? Like, how would you react if you were in the class and, out of nowhere, these costumes just appeared, right? They're all hype. They go get changed. The little song starts playing. It's all like, my hero, just starts playing in the background and everybody's just having a lit time, honestly. They start doing their thing and suddenly they basically find themselves all just outside. All Might begins to explain the rules, right? He's all like, all right, so there's teams and this is how it works. Izuku, after hearing this, is like, great. And he actually ends up getting paired with Uraraka. After he gets paired with Uraraka, she begins blushing and Izuku goes over towards her and begins to say, hey, sorry about, but she's like, oh, don't worry, it's fine. It wasn't even a big deal anyways. She just starts thinking about Izuku and, Izuku's just sitting there with a smile on his face. It's like, great, well, I hope we can do great on this little mission that we're going to go on. Uraraka's like, right. And everybody else in the class is just like, ain't that going to be weird? Like, we all saw what he did yesterday. But it seems like to everybody, like Uraraka didn't even care. So they're all like, so maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she liked it. But Izuku's just sitting there and his opponent, obviously, it's going to be Bakugo and Ida. Now, Bakugo doesn't call Deku, so he's just going to rush in and, guns blazing like Bakugo does. And he's pretty much just going to be screaming through the area where he's going to be trying to find Izuku. He's going to be like, damn it, shooting explosions, trying to blast his way towards the direction of Deku. And Deku's just going to look at Bakugo, who's just shooting in with his explosions and shoots an explosion at Deku, mind you. It's a powerful one. It's a huge one. But Izuku just smiles and goes, full counter, as suddenly the wave of the explosion shoots back into Bakugo's face. And he's like just sent flying back, just wondering how that just happened. But Bakugo begins to essentially, how do I put this? He begins to essentially rush back in towards the direction of Deku and goes to shoot another one, but more powerful than before. And it just happens again. The blast repels and Bakugo begins to just like shoot back and land, finally realizing what happened. He repelled its attack. He begins to wonder how he did that and he asks him, hey, how'd you do that? As Deku just looks back to the direction of, Bakugo and he's like, I'm not telling you, like I would be a fool to tell you. I'm not doing that, right? And suddenly we just have, Deku just being like, chuckling and stuff like that. And, Bakugo's just angry. He's like, you know what I mean? And, he rushes in trying to beat Deku hand to hand, but it's just not happening. Deku begins to absolutely pummel Bakugo. It's like Bakugo feels as if he's fighting against a mountain. I don't know if you guys have ever gone through this experience, but I personally have. I'm a basketball player and I usually have to play against the taller person on the team just because the friends that I usually play with, with are like around 5'11", and since I'm 5'6", like 6 feet tall, I look a little bit taller, so I always have to play center, right? But basically, I every now and then get to play against someone of equal height, right? It's fun, you know, we're even, and then sometimes I have to play against a 6'7" monster who's absolutely jacked and looks like Hercules, right? And I try to push the dude, but he's just not moving, dude. I don't get it. But basically, that's what Bakugo's feeling. He's going up against a mountain and he's just getting outclassed in every way, right? And, you know, Bakugo's doing his very best to try to do, you know, try to move him, try to win. But dude, it's not working, like, at all. It's not. But, you know, it is what it is. And we basically get to a situation in time where Deku just wraps Bakugo up and he rushes up to the top of the building with Uraraka as, you know, he tells her to go towards the bomb. He grabs her by the hand and throws her at the bomb as, you know, she made herself weightless. She comes into contact with the bomb before Ida could rush in with this reciprocal burst and, you know, move it out of the way. And All Might just goes, "Hero team wins!"